I'd like to call the Thursday, September 2nd, 2021 Tree Advisory Commission meeting to order. And we can begin with roll call and attendance. To my extreme right,
Tom Schmitz, Park and Recreation Department.
Greg Dearson, Tree Commissioner.
Tom Romaine, Chair, Tree Commission.
Ellen Vancura, Tree Commission.
Joe Stadheim, City Engineer.
I'm introducing myself? Okay. John Nisley, planner with the City of New Ulm.
Thank you and welcome. Moving down to the agenda, I would entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So move.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Vancura,
Second.
second by Commissioner Dearson. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor to approve signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Moving on to the approval of minutes, I'd entertain a motion to approve the July 1 meeting minutes.
I reviewed them, so
Okay,
move.
Vancouver moves and
Second.
Dearson seconds. Any questions, comments, or changes on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. All of those who favor approval signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Old business, 2021 city reimbursement programs and budget update. City Engineer Statham.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Just a quick update. We've had, since the last meeting, 5 reimbursements submitted, bringing the total reimbursement amount to $2,443.53. And there were no other expenses in the last couple months. So we're sitting at an unused amount for the reimbursements, about $1,756. Excuse me, $1,756 remaining. That's available for reimbursements.
Any questions for Engineer Statham?
I see that most of it, I don't know where I looked at it, but most of them are maples, of course, because people plant them, they like the color, and that's understandable, but they're about 60%, 70%, and there was a few oaks, those on the native. Well, I'm glad to see at least there's a few, and they're not all maples.
Yeah, this, in the last couple months, we had a ginkgo and a linden.
Yeah, ginkgo lane, I
Yep.
forget where I saw it, but ginkgo, yeah, so that's good.
Chair Romaine and Commissioners, I just want to, since we're on kind of the budget discussion here, I do want to point out the balance of approximately $9,000.
Yes.
And, the end of the year is not too far away, so I don't know what you might have any thoughts with that. Doing carryovers annually is sometimes not always, viewed upon highly by city administration or finance. On the same hand, we don't want to, spend money that we're not needing to or wanting to. So it might be a little discussion point for you to consider your balance and the time remaining in the calendar year, and with only one other meeting, come November of the commission.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions on the city reimbursement programs and budget update, let's move down to that budget discussion for 2022, which you have just brought up, so.
Yes, Chair Romaine and Commissioners. The 22 budget is going your requested budget is, at my understanding, is going to be included in the preliminary budget that the council will consider adopting later this month. So that's no real update in the '22 budget necessarily. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are with the remaining $9,000 in this year's budget.
Well, my personal feelings on this are that, that when we request our 2022 budget, I'm very comfortable with the $7,000 total that's been submitted to the administration, and I think that any overages that we have at the end of this year, we should just turn back. I'm not interested in requesting a carryover because it seems we've been requesting a carryover for years and getting it, and then people are just not taking advantage of the tree reimbursement.
Yeah, the reimbursement program's correct. Although the commission does have, I think, the opportunity to recommend spending some of the commission's money on other initiatives and other tree needs of the city. So that's up to you to discuss. I don't know if Engineer Stadheim has anything to add to this thought.
Yeah, my initial thought was any parks that need maybe some more reforestation, we can, that would be a good spot if, Tom, if you have a parks in mind that could use more shade or things of that nature, I think that would be a good use. Also, for the Herman Heights tree planting, whatever funds that were set aside get used up for those out of this budget? I can't remember that.
I'd have to double check on that.
Okay.
Correct. But yes, I mean, if there is funds available and the commission's interested in planting more trees, there's parks, there's trails, there's other city property that could use some more reforestation and shade trees.
I know I've brought this up before, but there's the strip, a quarter of the bike trail is under private hands, and we're unable to take a lot of, it's 90% buckthorn, and I think the trees that are there are probably ash. I don't know if you ever approached it's a trucking firm, I'm trying to think what the name of it is. Anyway, it's on 12 South, whether they would be willing to sell that strip of property so we could manage the buckthorn and at least take out the female trees, etc. Not have to worry about trespassing.
Correct. That topic is still on the table, and it hasn't, there hasn't been any movement forward in discussions with that private landowner.
That would be and of course, reforestation of more native trees, that haven't, to replace, because we're going to lose, what is the ash borer? How many ash trees, or what percentage, do you have any idea? Of trees are ash that we're going to lose?
When there was a community-wide tree survey, they looked at the boulevard areas in particular, and there was over 2,500 ash in the boulevard areas.
Right,
That's not including private property.
right. And so one suggestion, I certainly don't want to turn it back, but it's going to be a large expense to, I know I live in a townhouse situation, we have 7, and we're just going to let it wait till, and you're not expected to cut them down when they look healthy, but on the other hand, if there's 2,500, maybe that should be, money could be used to proactively cut them down. I believe either Minneapolis or St. Paul is cutting them down before they're not waiting till they get sick and fall over. Mm-hmm. So and it might be both cities, but it's I think that would be a useful thing to do if people, especially get a head start on planting something else.
So just in big picture numbers here, looking at our $9,000 balance, we've got maybe $2,000 still earmarked for the reimbursement programs. And maybe the commission wants to hang on to another 1,000 for incidentals the remainder of the year. So that's 2 + 1 is 3,000. That would leave you $6,000 remaining to spend on tree planting this autumn, if you so desire.
Well, between the engineering department and the park and rec department, what are the needs out there?
Well, I would point out certainly that there are needs in use areas of some of our parks. So I would certainly anticipate that we could find appropriate locations to spend $6,000 on tree planting in parks, park use areas, and possibly even along the trail. So that might be a recommendation coming from me if you're so inclined with the remaining.
Certainly would support a motion on that.
I would too. I think Tom knows the needs, and that sounds reasonable. Yeah.
So the motion could be to authorize up to $6,000 in TAC funds in '21 for shade tree plantings on city property.
Can we leave that at their discretion then?
Pardon me?
Can we leave that at their discretion to
Well,
assign
if we have a motion on the floor, and if we second it, we can discuss it all to death.
Okay. I'll move to use that $6,000 to plant shade trees and in-use trees on parks.
Motion by Commissioner Dearson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Vancouver. Okay, discussion on what we can do with that $6,000 earmarked for other tree projects on city public lands.
So will that give us 20, 25 trees maybe?
Yeah,
Your discretion?
depending if we city staff plant them or if we just have a nursery plant them, that would really affect the cost a little bit. But, between Tom's staff and our staff up in the engineering office, I believe we can find appropriate locations to provide additional shade for the park users, possibly the trail as well.
I think with this drought too, that don't you have to spend money watering, don't you?
Yeah.
So that's an extra expense. If it was a wet fall, you wouldn't have to do anything, right?
Right, yeah, and Park and Rec's been, in lieu of mowing this year, they've been spending their time watering trees.
Watering trees, yeah.
Yes, and we have lost some shade trees in use areas this summer due to the drought. We do have some trees in our gravel bed bare root trees in the gravel bed that we will be planting. But I think this is a very appropriate use of your funds for planting more shade trees in use areas on city property.
Yeah, I see some dead ones on Broadway, yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign, motion carries. So, thank you for bringing that up,
Yes.
Tom. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a PUC update, and Mr. Nelson is not here, so. Emerald Ash Borer update, John Nisley. And
Good evening, Commissioners. John Nisley, planner with the City of New Ulm.
just a personal request on my hearing has not gotten any better since the last meeting. And if you could, people who are speaking, speak into the microphone, and I can actually follow the conversation.
Okay.
So, and use your outside voices. So.
Outside. Okay, jeez. All right. Can you hear me this way?
Yes,
Is this
I
good?
can. Thank you.
Okay. I was asked to come come here today to speak to you about the last round of funding from the DNR regarding the Emerald Ash Borer grants that were given out. The city again applied for another round of funding from the Department of Natural Resources for Emerald Ash Borer control. And we found out just a few days ago that we were successful in our grant application. Again, this time we were fully funded up to $100,000. There are a few specific details related to this application in particular. There's one major difference in this round was that they were looking at, or they added an additional question, which was to focus on areas within the community that had what they considered priority populations. And this map that you see on the overhead is a Minnesota Pollution Control Agency map. That's titled, it's an environmental justice map. So there are census tracts within the city of New Ulm that have populations that report, in this situation, 40% of the population reports having an income level less than 185% of the federal poverty level. So in this grant round, we specifically stated that we would be focusing our ash removals in this part of New Ulm. So to give you a kind of a rough estimate of where this location is, it'd be roughly 20th north to 20th south and from Broadway down to the river. Okay? And with this $100,000, our estimates were that it would cost roughly $200 per removal, and then again $200 for replanting. So with those totals in mind, we're estimating removal and replanting of roughly 250 trees within the boulevard area. We used a higher number because the last round we had an incredibly low bid on removal, and we know we weren't going to get that again. So another caveat to this is because we were able to remove more trees the last round, we were actually able to do some work on this side of Broadway. Let's call it the east side of Broadway. And we actually were able to do removals on Minnesota and German from 12th north to 12th south. So with this grant round, we are not going to be focused in those areas because they already had funding that we had used in those areas. So we'll be going from outside of 12th north and 12th south on Minnesota and German, and then everything from 20th to 20th on Valley and Front.
And Spring.
And Spring. Thanks, Joe.
If I could add one thing then to Planner Nisley's description there, just for reference, we have approximately 315 trees, ash trees remaining within the boulevard areas in this area of town. Jeff Anderson from my office went out and tried to get a rough count on what we believe is out there in the boulevards. So the grant should cover a large majority of our boulevard trees that are ash in this area.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that comment, because with this grant, we'd be able to remove roughly 85% of the ash within the boulevard areas in that part of town. A couple other things. Number one is with this process, we're not just going down and taking down everybody's ash trees. We'll be sending out initial letters letting them know that they have an ash in the boulevard in front of their house. And if they would like to treat that tree or not have it removed, that they are to contact us and let us know before we put bids out. If we don't have anything from that property owner requesting that we do something differently, we will be putting a bid package together with all the locations of ash that are to be removed, and then letting those bids this fall, and actually would start removal this fall, as early as October. That's basically a little overview of this grant. You can ask me any questions you'd like regarding it.
John, I do want to add one more thing. The work under this grant will not include any trees along Broadway. That's in the boulevard, just due to the increased cost of removal along the state highway. So we'll really focus on the areas off of Broadway.
Yep.
just so we can get the most value for the grant dollar that we receive.
One more comment I'd like to add, Commissioners, is that, we're suggesting you take action on this item to recommend that the city council accept this grant and authorize the city manager to execute a grant agreement with the state of Minnesota.
Would somebody be willing to make a motion to recommend to the city council authorize the city manager to execute the agreement?
I move to recommend city council authorize city manager to execute that agreement with the state of Minnesota for the DNR, preparing for that EAB grant.
Second that.
Okay, the motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, the timeline can start this fall to remove, and then could we still be in removal next fall and winter?
Yes.
And then would we have the funds in hand to stay through, would be 23?
We will have 2 fall winter seasons to remove the trees. So this fall of 21, 22, and then the fall of 22, fall and winter of 22, 23.
This run on the state fiscal year then? Or is
Yes.
it on the calendar year?
No, it's the state fiscal year.
Okay.
So all of our funds have to be expended by June 30th of 23.
Will the replants options be the same as they were in our previous round?
Yes.
Because I think that was something that, I don't know if we can promote that more completely or better, because like the maple trees not being included was, I guess, caught some people off guard. So,
Sure. And the last time we did replanting, we did list all of we sent a letter out to the property owners, then listed all the trees that would be planted. So maybe we could just make sure that provide a little more emphasis on that in the letter when that goes out. Yeah, because there will be no maples on the list.
and that was part of the DNR's pre-plan, I guess you'd say.
Well, the idea is that we don't overload on a certain species of tree, so we run into the same issue that we have with ash and that we ran into with elm. Where if it did,
Because maple is more short-lived than many of the other, like an elm or a teak or a linden.
it depends on the species in particular,
Some
but
are
yeah.
not.
right, there's some soft maples like a silver maple that just won't live as long.
It's a horrible boulevard tree. It's,
Yeah.
if you look at the history of tree planting in New Ulm, I think a lot of people walked down in the river bottoms and got trees that were easily planted by cuttings, and so we wound up with a lot of eastern cottonwood and soft maple, and it's just not a good thing to have on a small city lot. So there are some really nice maples, but silver maple is not one of them.
That's truly what they did. Is
Well, it tends to be very shallow rooted, and then it gets a very, very, very wide-spreading crown,
Large.
which makes it a beautiful shade tree, but it's a horrible combination when the wind blows in the summertime with a full load of leaves on the tree. In the river bottoms, when you have a forest of shade-intolerant trees, they all tend to grow at the same time, and they protect each other. It's not a good isolated tree species. So, any further discussion on the motion? Okay, so, hearing none. All those in favor of supporting the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And my compliments to the city planner and the city engineer on this fantastic second round of EAB removals and replacements. It's really an outstanding achievement, particularly when you look at the cities throughout the state that have gotten these reimbursements. New Ulm has done very, very well. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's noticeable as you drive through some of the cities that don't have as many trees as we do, and they look amazingly bare.
Well, I lived through professionally lived through the scourge of Dutch elm disease, and it was a big challenge then, and the green ash issues or emerald ash borer are going to be the same thing. So I'm glad we're ahead of it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Moving on, Buckthorn update, and I would ask Jordy Veet to give us an update.
All right, good evening, everybody. I just have a brief update on the Covered Up project. This is the second year now, kind of the third year if you kind of take a look at the planning. You have most of the slides, I think, in your agenda packet. I did add a few out of interest, but I'm just going to kind of go through these. I'll go through these fairly quick, and then you can ask whatever questions that you have. Just as a reminder, in case you were wondering where the sites were across Minnesota, this is just a representation of where the sites are across the state of Minnesota. A few things to note. This year, the garlic mustard, definitely on the south side of the site, came in a lot thicker. That has been a theme across the entire state. In a lot of the sites where buckthorn has been removed, garlic mustard has been the big thing coming in. June, about mid-June, I was in removing garlic mustard in the Dames rocket and then non-test from the site, non-test buckthorn. So we have, again, the test and non-test. The test buckthorn we have flags for, which is what we're keeping track of for how much of that germinates and grows. Any of the non-test buckthorn gets cut and removed. Same thing was followed up at the end of July before doing the measurements that I will present here shortly. And it also has been a recurring theme, as you know, from Minnesota this year with the dry weather, that's probably also playing a role into our results this year. So August 5th and 6th, the observations were completed this fall. We again worked to describe the understory, took a bunch of photos, assessed our test buckthorn seedlings, and then submitted that data, which has all been completed on my end. So that is now entered into the information for the U of M already. Again, I can skip over this one. Just a few things. The ones that are highlighted in red are changes from the previous year. So square one, which is one of our seeded plots, the bare ground increased slightly. Other than that, all the other ones stayed the same except for the broadleaf plants. Square 2 and square 3 also seen an increase in those. That was mainly garlic mustard, and then white snakeroot has been coming into those as well. Just a few pictures for you on all of them. You have on the left is square 1. The flags represent the boundaries of it. So square 1 is seeded with some of the native seed mixes. Square 2 has been left unseeded. Square 3 again on the left has been seeded with native seeds. Square 4 was left unseeded. 5 again is our last one that has been seeded with the native seedlings, and then square 6 was left alone. Taking a closer look at the buckthorn, if it is shaded in red, those are areas where it has increased. The blue ones we saw decrease. So square 1, 2, let's just do 1A and 1B first. So 1A had an increase, one seedling grew that did not grow previously. If you look at flag 2B, which is in square 2, that had an increase in the number of buckthorn that was growing in it. That is an unseeded square. Square 4A, Our flag 4A, which is in square 4, also had an increase in the number of buckthorn growing in it, which did not have native seedlings. 5A, which is in square 5, which is seeded with native seedlings, had a decrease in the amount of buckthorn growing in it. In 6A and 6B, that is a square that is not seeded with natives, and it's seen a little increase and also a decrease, depending on which part of the square we were in. So that one stayed about the same in the end.
Are the seeds like grasses and sedges? Or?
Grasses, sedges, flowers, yep. I have, coming up here in a bit, I have that list again
Oh.
for us, so yeah, we can revisit that as a reminder.
I'm sure you've told us. But.
So, yeah, no, I have that back in here, I believe. So just kind of a summary of the seeded plots. So those are the ones that have the native seed mix in it. We've had about 25% germination of buckthorn. Compared to the non-seeded, 53% of our buckthorn has germinated in there. The height of our buckthorn in the seeded plants is about 3 inches, so little increase. The non-seeded, it's just shy of the 3 inches, so they're kind of comparable with that. The number of leaves is interesting. The buckthorn in the non-seeded ones definitely have more leaves growing on them than our seeded plots. And overall, we're at about a 35% germination rate of buckthorn across the plots for the state. Just a couple close-up pictures for you. This one's just some of the grasses that were coming up in one of the plots. So just kind of I zoomed in on that a bit to make it a little bit easier to see. Definitely out of what I'm seeing and what other plots are seeing across the state, the grasses are the ones that are growing the best in the plots. So I just put a few examples of those in there. I think I got one more, and then we'll get into some additional species stuff. You can even see a little bit of a buckthorn coming up in the corner of that picture as well. This is a little bit more detailed than I think that I had in there in the fall. These are species I have found on the site. If they are in purple, so the nodding fuse, the figwort, the little blue stem, those are species I've identified that have been part of the native seed mix. So we know those are coming up as well. The bottlebrush grass and the red columbine are also part of the native seed mix, and I believe those are coming up. I have been waiting on identification just to double check myself on that from the U of M. So we definitely do have some of the native seeds that were in there coming up. All the other ones that are in black are just species that are in the plots or around the plots. Some of them you're probably already familiar with being talked about. Lily in the Valley is in the area, ground ivory. We do have a box elder tree in there, garlic mustard, Virginia waterleaf, the white snake root I already talked about, Dame's rockets in there. Green ash is the most common tree in that area as far as that part of the bike trail and the area I'm working in, and then a few other species of plants and flowers in there as well. Then just to... Nope, I don't have the seed mix in there. Okay. Looking ahead to 2022, that was originally scheduled to be the last year of the project. There may be an option for that to continue on, especially with the weather conditions. So 2022, again, we'll be making observations, doing measurements. They're also looking at possibly adding in some other things to take a look at to see if these are influencing anything, such as soil samples, earthworms assessment, plant community information, and then pollinator resource assessment as well. And I put one link in here to share with you. This is something new that they put up on their website. It's the community blog. So if you go on there, you can see pictures and information from different parts of the state where these projects are taking place. I submitted a couple photos that I believe they posted as well from the site in New Ulm. So it's just kind of something of interest if you want to check that out. I guess with that said, I'll open it up to questions if anybody has any questions.
You know, is that white snake root, is that what you see everywhere now?
Yes, it's very easy to pick out right now because
Yeah.
it's a bit taller and it has white flowers on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that considered invasive? Because I guess I've never noticed it to the extent that...
I would have to look for sure. I haven't recently have not seen it on any lists.
haven't
So as far as I know, it's not.
Okay.
But yeah, it is, I think it's definitely, we had that discussion in one of our last meetings, because we do monthly meetings with the Covered Up project, and several of us said, they're like, well, it's either this spreading more, or are we just now noticing it more for some reason? But
Yeah,
yeah.
that was my question.
Yep. So yeah, we kind of had that same question too. It's definitely around much more. And maybe it might be one of the species that can deal with drier conditions better, so that might be why it's a little more out there a lot more this year. So
No, hackberry is a real, is that a soft tree? Because hackberry is just everywhere also as far as trees that self-seed themselves.
yeah, there's some of them around too. I haven't looked at how common they are. I've just kind of been sticking around right now the area of
But
the
they're
Cover It Up.
okay tree.
So yeah,
Okay tree, yeah.
you know, Tom probably might know more about the hackberries than I do.
Which species?
But
Oh, I don't know. I just know what the leaf looks like. So there's many species.
Pardon me?
There's many species of hackberry.
No, there's just one native in
Oh.
yeah.
in Minnesota. But as you get further west,
Oh, okay.
then hackberry becomes a more dominant tree in the natural world.
Oh, okay.
As the forest ecosystems get simpler, the further west you go, there's more hackberry in western Minnesota than there tends to be here.
Here. Okay.
Is there any part of this study that discriminates between shaded and non-shaded plots in terms of what's happening on those plots?
There is not. They are in the process of using some software at the U of M level to essentially break down what percentage of sunlight is getting through. Just based off of some of the pictures I've seen of other plots, there's definitely some differences between areas that are more sunny and more shaded. So hopefully as they're able to analyze data more, we'll be able to kind of get some more information on that.
Would be really
One of the initial concerns I had when I was looking at what they were seeding is that, you remove buckthorn as an understory tree, but there's still a forest tree canopy over most of these sites. And when your native seed mix is composed of shade intolerant plants, it's kind of skews the research data.
Yeah, yep. And I know they had a certain percentage that they were going for as far as the percentage of cover and light coming through. All the sites, when they did their initial analysis, are within that percentage that they were looking for. But yeah, I've seen pictures from other sites, and it is very clear difference between the sunny and shaded. So I think that's something that probably is going to have to be looked at more as far as, it depending on how much light the site gets, these seed mixtures aren't going to be overly great for it.
Just hopeful that there would be some findings on species that would be more shade tolerant and able to crowd out buckthorn, because
Yeah.
otherwise we remove
Yep.
buckthorn and other invasive species, and then they just come back,
Yep.
and it becomes a continual cultural process to try to keep those invasive species at bay.
Yeah, yep. And if you remove buckthorn from an area that's shaded and it's still extremely shaded, that's just that much easier for the shade tolerant invasives to come in quicker than
Years
others.
ago, when I was working on South Market Park to try to reduce the population of buckthorn, by the time I was done with my project and shredded a couple of sweatshirts, I figured that all I was doing was releasing smaller buckthorn. So,
That is so true.
Yeah, yeah, I would tend to agree with that the smaller buckthorn comes in. It also seems to be a theme across the state that the garlic mustard is also a big one that's coming in behind the buckthorn. So
Yeah, we have, the same habitat conditions prevail after we remove the invasive species, and they're adapted to that habitat, so.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm really glad for your doing that research, but, questions
You're
for
welcome.
Jordy or comments?
No, I'm getting that same impression also. The last project we did was on Oak Street, and when we took out in fact, I've had the thought that there's things worse than buckthorn, such as garlic mustard, almost, we were taking out, the only thing that grew in this deep ditch on Oak Street is buckthorn and Tartarian honeysuckle. And when we got taking out the ones with berries and a few other ones, it was just plain dirt, except for the clusters of buckthorn seedlings.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's, I think it's going to be a continuing battle until we wear out the seed in the sites. And I have inadvertently blown myself off of the city site here, and I don't know how to recover I was trying to get back to the agenda.
I don't know if Ellen has anything to add on Buckthorn. We certainly got Jordy's update.
Oh, just, yeah, it was kind of interesting. We recovered a stolen bike. We called the police. That was all Sunday.
There we
We
go.
buried buckthorn, whether it's
Thanks.
private land or not, because any berries in New Ulm will spread all over New Ulm, so I cleaned out, all of Kraft, which used to be, Kraft sold, it used to be City of New Ulm property, but now there's some buried trees, and I talked to the new Kraft, grounds manager, and he said I can take it out, the buried trees. I'm not going to take not the male trees. And then the other spot that I found a lot of buried thick buckthorn with thick amount of berries is I believe it's the Target property. Of course, that's all weeds now, the parking lot. And then there's, Tom, do you know, is that Storm Pond, is that belong to Target? It's got a big fence around it.
It's Target's.
And then right after that, it's definitely Junior Pioneer Park. But there's this no man's land that's got buried buckthorn on it, and I don't know whose it is. That guy that's selling it, I've got his name and just wondering, but I don't want to trespass. Anybody have an idea where that?
We'd have to look on the Brown County, website to verify who owns what parcels. So we can do that at a later time.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I guess that's the white snake root.
Under new business, we have kind of several items that are all nested together, so we can probably
That's all I have to say.
amplify our discussion when we get down to the new business. So, moving on, if we could, to bring back those ideas under new business, but the utility billing informational inserts, again, Derek is not here, but the next one, I believe, is next April.
Yes, I will verify that with the finance department and have information no later than our next meeting.
Probably be more germane to bring that back for the November meeting. And the big tree contest, it was just nip and tuck with both people who sent in a nomination. And one tree was quite a bit larger than the other. So,
Down on,
The winner has been notified.
Good.
And is considering their options for planting a tree and collecting prize money as reimbursement. And the media was alerted. So no action necessary for 21. Successful program. Thank you very much again. And I don't know if you want to discuss at this meeting or the next meeting what your thoughts are for 22.
right, we need to select a species, and we can bring that back for action in the
and what
forthcoming
list
days.
is used to?
Pardon me?
What list is used to choose?
This year?
No. Well, any year. What list is used, official list? Is that a city list?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll bring that back at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, moving on into new business. There was an issue brought up about Buckthorn at the city-owned Garden Terrace, and then we've been talking at the last couple of meetings about an invasive species proposal, and we were trying to get a work session together on that, and then it kind of segued into the question on the role of the liaison because of the discussion that went on around Garden Terrace, and to me that we're kind of an interesting city commission in that we have budget responsibilities, and as I understand it, as a commission, we can't conduct business unless we got a forum or a meeting or something where we can do that. So the issue becomes we meet every 2 months. Issues come up in that interim, and some of those might be calling for a change in how we spend budgeted funds. And how do we address that? And that's my question for the commissioners and our advisors. So, has anybody got any ideas on that?
Well, I think you cannot conduct official business outside of an official meeting. I know that much. And
Would budgetary decisions be, we have the authority to spend our funds on tree-related projects. So in the interim between meetings, if an opportunity comes up, how do we address that?
we could put together a special meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we would need public notice, a week or two out, and schedule a special meeting for a special decision.
I think we could do a special meeting in as little as 2 or 3 days worth of notice.
Correct.
If
yes.
something urgent were to come up, but I don't believe there's any way we can appoint a single person to be the authoritative figure
No.
to make those decisions. It's got to go through the commission.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that solves one question. The second thing is that the invasive species proposal that we've talked about at a couple of meetings, we really need to schedule a work session to kind of hash that all out, because that plays into the Garden Terrace issue as well. So.
Yep. And that would be handled in the same manner, being that you are meeting at a work session. That would need to be published, just because
Right.
a quorum
I
would be
understand
present.
that
Yep.
the issue was with the commissioners themselves.
Right,
And
yep.
Then one commissioner had some issues that we had to postpone the meeting until those were solved.
Right.
And
Yep.
we just need to readdress that so we can move on.
Yep, just want to make sure that was clear. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
So whenever approximately you would like to pull a work session together, I can organize that if you just give me some direction on potential windows of time.
could you, I don't have the computer skills to, put out something like a Survey Monkey to,
Yeah, I can do that.
could we do that in terms of trying to schedule a work session?
Could I make a comment concerning the tactics, number 5? develop a public information outreach program, encourage, enable non-city land administrators to manage infestations of invasive vegetation species. I'll give a brief summary of compare and contrast. Two private pieces of land, MLC and Kraft Foods. Now, MLC, when I first approached them, went to the city student council and forget who was the liaison, and they took it wholeheartedly and basically have removed and continue to remove buckthorn from their property. They did the work themselves. Kraft Foods, they went all the way, tried to get volunteers from the employees, from the administration, and they went it had to go to, I think it's Chicago, and Kraft Foods said they would not contribute a penny to removing the buckthorn from the property they own that they want to develop supposedly for a warehouse. So there, but I could do it. So it's, you've got, I don't care if the buckthorn's sitting on Kraft Food property or on the bike trail. Those berries are going to spread, and, my life goal is to have New Ulm buckthorn free as possible. And so I don't mind spending my time taking out whoever buckthorn it is. Perkins, 24 hours I spent taking it out of Perkins. If you can imagine, they had that much.
I think these are great topics,
Yeah,
Ellen,
so
for
anyway.
our work session.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to say that needs to be,
Yeah, so I will work
apples and
on
oranges, yeah.
a work session between the late September and mid-October, and I'll send out a doodle poll.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on those three items of new business? Okay, so our next scheduled meeting, moving on, is November 4th, which will be the last meeting for the year, and we'll probably have elections for chair and
Yes.
vice chair.
Yes.
So, and I'm not sure if we're who's turning over at the end of this year or not.
We'll have that information to you. I'll get that to you in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Any further business to come before the tree commission? Okay, well, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Right on time.